Okay. That mostly looks good. I have to do a little bit of promo stuff, but glad the setup looks okay because I was worried it wouldn't. So we're doing okay. Doing okay, except Discord hates me. So that will slow me down a bit. We're getting there. We're getting there. Honestly, I'm making good time, all things considered. Okay. Okay, we're getting through things slowly. Usually I tweet from my... I didn't think this part through, but I'll do it from my phone. That's okay. That's okay. Little lack of planning on my part, but it's all good. I'll just do it from my phone. Almost good. It's always so odd just being on by myself, which is something I have to get more used to, because I'm just so used to, like, every time I'm live, it's like playing a game with someone. But we are trying to adjust a bit more, so figured this was a good opportunity to do so. So yeah, all right. We're all set up on that account. We're all set up on the tier list. And I have got a solid, I want to say 22 books. We're going to change these tiers a bit. S tier, we're going to make Gnawing at My Enclosure. A tier. What would I say A tier is? We'll go. We love Whimsy. B tier can be A Solid Time. C tier. I certainly finished it. And D tier will just be DNF. I did not DNF much. Usually if I feel like I'm not going to like a book, I just don't start it, which I wouldn't mind having the time to read more trash. It's just that I don't have the time. If I did, like, I would happily read more goofy things that I see on, like, Book Talk and whatnot. Probably to complain about them, to be honest. I love to complain a little bit, but at the moment, my time was just limited, and I had a Goodreads goal of 20 books, and I got through it barely. Barely. So let's just do the DNFs real quick, because I don't have much to say about them. It was, I DNF'd Warhammer by Brandon Sanderson, and I DNF'd, not Warhammer, Warbreaker. I don't know why I keep thinking it's Warhammer. And I DNF'd Starling House by... Where is my Goodreads? I'm going to be going to my phone a little bit for the Goodreads information, especially on the earlier books that I read this year, because I will not be able to keep up. Alexi Harrow. Harrow or Harrow? Not quite sure. Anyway, these are my only 2 DNFs this year. I put Brandon Sanderson higher up because I do think there's a chance that I could come back to it. I don't know. When I started it, I just really wasn't in the mood for it, and I was really just pushing myself through because I needed to be reading something. And it was not working. I also got it from the library, which means I had a limited amount of time, and it's a pretty big book, and I just wound up returning it and giving up. Starling House, I'm not gonna lie, I think I read 2 chapters of it, and I just immediately, I don't know what it was, but I truly just immediately was like, this is not for me. And it isn't, so, alright, let's go in general order that I read things. We'll skip around a little bit on, like, series that I read, with something in between. Okay, very first book I read was beginning of January. I read Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I would say I have a mixed but mostly positive relationship with Leigh Bardugo. I adore Six of Crows. But on the other hand, I quite simply could not get through Shadow and Bone. So I don't know what that means, but Ninth House I did get through, and I got through relatively fast, and I'm going to put it at We Love Whimsy, but I am going to say that if you're watching it and you haven't read the book, I would look up the trigger warnings before proceeding, certainly. It's good. I enjoyed it. It's got some pretty dark moments, and you should be aware of what's coming. Before. Thank you. Yes, I took them quite seriously. But I do realize that some of the things I'm putting in We Love Whimsy, I don't know if they're going to be whimsical. What I call Ninth House whimsical. It's certainly got some very cool magic. And it's got, like, dark academia vibes. But look up the trigger warnings. Look up the trigger warnings before you proceed. Exactly. Whimsy is a state of mind. It was a very fast read. And I do want to read the sequel. I haven't gotten to it yet. All I know about it is I'm pretty sure it includes a glow-in-the-dark, a man whose lower body part glows like a glow stick. And that says whimsy to me. So, it belongs there. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. Okay. Second, I read Gallant, and I gave that 3 stars on Goodreads. And it's either high, I certainly finished it, or low, a solid time. I'm going to put it high, I certainly finished it. It's by V. Schwab, whose books tend to take me a while to get through. The intention is good, certainly. But it was really short. I thought the world building was cool, but it was really fast. Doing good. Doing a chill afternoon. And the pacing, I just, like, didn't get to know these characters at all. And then it was over. And then it was done. So I wish we could have seen a little bit more of the world. It's about, like, some kind of, like, haunted house. I love magical houses and magical buildings. That's a very niche topic. But, so it's basically about, like, a shadow realm of the house she's living in. This is an awful description. I'm, like, looking to double check the Goodreads summary. I read this back in January. So listen, you can't hold me to remember it that well. The house was interesting, the characters not so much, and the plot around the house. But I liked the house. We're going to move along. Next, my last January read. Yes, my last January read. This is How You Lose the Time War. This is going up in gnawing at my enclosure. For sure. Thank you. Definitely real. This I would tell anyone to read. It's like short, okay? So like if you're like, okay, I don't know if I can get through it, you can. I read it in one airplane sitting in like 3 hours. It's basically a series of letters back and forth between these two enemy soldiers, who are like, it's way advanced in the future, so they're like fighting a war between different timelines, jumping back and forth and leaving each other letters. And it is a nice little romance between them. It's really good. It's all letters. So you kind of understand the plot through that, and it is slightly poetic, the prose. But it's really good. I would 1000% recommend this to just about anyone, honestly. Some of the books that I like, I do recognize are like not gonna be everyone's cup of tea. I think everyone could enjoy this. So, I am from the Northeast in Jersey. All right. Next book. Please read This Is How You Lose the Time War. That's all I got to say about that. Absolutely gnawing at my enclosure. Okay. March through early April. Let's just do the whole Jade trilogy. Greenbone Saga trilogy. Let's just bang it out. We're going to go... we are going to put these two up in here and this here. I would put these could go back and forth depending on the day. These are the first two, Jade City and Jade War. I really enjoyed them both. It is about, how would I describe Jade City? Let's see what it's sort of magic, but the magic system is pretty light. It's mostly about like two warring gangs with a mild magic system. And it's a great trilogy. I still haven't read I believe it's like a prequel with the like mini short stories. That's the only thing I haven't read in this kind of world. I really enjoyed the world building. I really enjoyed the characters. My only issue with Jade Legacy is it's so long and it covers so much time and the pacing is rough because you just try and do a little too much, a little too fast. So by the time it's wrapped up, I like feel like there's still just so much I wanted to know and see that it didn't happen. But the first two are super great, and honestly, Legacy is a great time too. It just started to have some problems. I think a fourth book might have served it well, is really where I'm at with that. It has been cold out. It has been very windy and cold. And it's good because global warming, you want it to be cold, but I have been freezing. What did I read next? Okay. So I took a 2-month hiatus from reading after Jade City. I guess that's another con of the Greenbone Saga, is it put me in a monumental reading slump. It's nice. I like it. I'm near the city, so I can go in and out pretty comfortably, and we have all 4 seasons, but winter is hard. It is hard. So yes, after my solid 2-month reading slump, thank you, Fonda Lee, I read The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence, and this is also going in, I finished it, certainly. It's about some magic library, and again, I love a magic building, a magic house, a magic library. If it seems sentient, great. So I was like, this seems right up my alley. I would not say that it was. I just started getting bored because I liked the library. I liked hearing about the area. But the two main characters just did not interest me that much. And I'm not gonna lie, I wound up skipping like 100 pages of it. Because I was like, I want to know what's going on, but I just do not care about these people and their things. Because there's like two main characters and it switches between their POVs. And one of them, they're both in the library, but at different times. And the answer that you get, the reveal at the end, was pretty good. It just didn't care that much. That is definitely expensive travel, yes, to get to New Jersey from Birmingham. And also, I just feel like there's a few better places that could be traveled. Jersey's great, but I don't know how much there is to do for, like, vacation. Okay. That was June. We're now into July. I will say, it broke my reading slump. Sort of. I got really into robot novellas after this. We're now at the robot novellas section of this. So we've got a Psalm for the Wild-Built and a Prayer for the Crowned Shy, which I read back to back for like a day reading each. They're both really short. I am 26. I'm going to put these both in We Love Whimsy, right up at the top. This one actually can go down here. They're both good. I wouldn't say they explore anything that's super new. It's basically about a T-monk and a robot just kind of finding each other and traveling together. Let me tell you, nothing made me crave the life of a T-monk quite like reading this book. I didn't even know there was a potential job. I don't think people do it here, but the idea of like, oh, they make tea for people and sit and listen to their stories while they have a cup of tea. That sounds like a great job. Sounds like a great time. But it's a really good book about like burnout and being kind to yourself. I would say that it can, especially by the second one, I wouldn't say that it feels preachy, but you can certainly tell that there's more of an intention of giving a message than telling a super detailed story. So by the second book, it was starting to lose me a little in that regard. It's very charming. It's so incredibly charming, though. So, because it's basically like a bunch of years in the future, and it's an optimistic look at the future. I feel like we don't get a lot of books that take place in the future where it's like things are good. And things are relatively good. So, yeah, it's like, I mean, humans did almost destroy the world, but then they didn't. And the robots all said, we're actually going to leave. And so the robots and the humans separate for a couple hundred years, and then the T-monk finds the first robot that's ever been seen in a long time. It was really good. It was a really good time. It was very sweet, very charming. Just started to get a bit boring. Then we continue the robot novellas, because I started reading the Murderbot Diaries. So I have nothing in a solid time, but I'm not putting these there, so I read 5. I read 5 robot novellas out of 20 books. 25% of the books are all just robot novellas. I loved reading robot novellas this year. I don't I just really liked it. Murderbot Diaries is exactly what it sounds like. No, it's not. It's not. But it is about a robot who kind of gained sentience and hacked its system and is now kind of running rogue, doing its thing. It's had killed a bunch of people, hence why it's called Murderbot. It calls itself Murderbot, to be clear. And is sort of trying to figure out how it killed a bunch of people, and there's sort of an overarching, like, conspiracy going on. I will admit, I only read the first 3. I do want to keep reading them, so don't take that too seriously. But again, main character is so charming. It's so funny too. Like, I still remember the intro being like, hacked my systems, can do whatever I want. I guess you'd expect me to, like, go on a rampage and kill all the humans, but I instead downloaded and watched 6 years worth of TV. And I cannot fault Murderbot for that. I think Murderbot is so funny. I think the, like, way it plays on, like, typical tropes for, like, robots and AI, like, want to be recognized as humans and treated like humans. And meanwhile, like, some of the humans find out Murderbot is sentient and is like, oh, you should ride up with us in, like, the human, like, passenger seats so that we can talk to you and respect you. We don't want you to go sit in the cargo. And Murderbot is horrified. Like, just horrified to be told it can't just go sit in the cargo and watch its shows. It has to sit and talk with people. And I get it. Like, I felt, heard, seen. I'm also going to put Rogue Protocol, not Rogue Protocol, Artificial Intelligence. All Systems Red is the first one. Artificial Condition is the second one. They're both going and gnawing at my enclosure. Artificial Condition includes another super smart robot, but it's like a massive fucking ship. And its interactions with Murderbot are very fun. It's the Murderbot names the ship Art because it's a asshole research transport. So they have a fun dynamic. I just love Murderbot and the way the author writes a character who's so far from human but still demonstrates a lot of humanity is, like, really nice. Like, Murderbot is very clearly separate from humanity, is horrified when it has to sit with the humans or when it gets a more human appearance, and Art, who's helping with it, is like, oh, should I give you genitals? Disgusted by the idea. But despite that, Murderbot is a lovely time. I'm gonna put, which one was the third one? I'm gonna put Rogue Protocol in, I'm gonna put it in a solid time. I know it was fun, but I also can't really recall what happened in it in the way I can remember the first 2 books. It definitely feels like more of a middle of the series, just kind of we're moving things along before we pick back up. And that paused me a bit. But I know I enjoyed it, and I know I will get back to the series, so I don't have anything that bad to say about it. I skipped a few books because I read 3 things in between Artificial Condition and Rogue Protocol, but it didn't make sense to have to come back to it. So then, this might be my highest of the year. Not sure. But in August, I read The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez or Jimenez. I'm bad at names. Gnawing at my enclosure. Very strongly gnawing at my enclosure. This is about 2 warriors. This is the book description from Goodreads. 2 warriors shepherd an ancient god across a broken land to end the tyrannical reign of a royal family in this new epic fantasy. Yeah. This book, guys, this book. what do I even say? Like, what do I even have to say about this? This is where I will say, unlike This Is How You Lose the Time War, where I'm like, anyone could get through this, anyone could read this. I do not have the same confidence about The Spear Cuts Through Water. The writing is very interesting and very enjoyable, but it's complicated. It's got, like, it switches between first, second, and third person continuously throughout the whole book. Hello, welcome. And you kind of switch between this character in the modern-ish world who is at this, like, dream theater being told the story of these two warriors going on this journey. So you switch between a lot of the second person. Yeah, so actually when you're reading about the main character in, like, the modern world, that's told in second person, if I'm remembering correctly. It takes a minute to get used to it. It does. Now, I will say, I read Homestuck back in the day, and that's in second person, and that was not as good content-wise. So, it takes some getting used to. It takes some adjusting, but I really enjoyed it. It really has an interesting way of conveying, like, spoken word stories and theater in a way that I have not experienced in a book. The characters are great. It's a little gruesome. It is a little gruesome. There's a chunk of violence that, like, just grossed me out. Not enough to stop reading it, but it, like, to be clear, I'm recommending it, but with the knowledge of it's a little gross. It is a little gross sometimes. But it was lovely. It was so good. I give it 5 stars on Goodreads. I really enjoyed it. It was such a good time. Absolute. There's one other book that I will have to debate whether or not it goes above it, but The Spear Cuts Through Water may have been my number 1 read of the year. Okay, then we did some Chinese novels. Ballad of Sword and Wine, the first book, is gonna go at the top of a solid time. This is enemies to lovers. What genres? It's like, what genres do I describe this as? Yeah, fantasy, romance, historical, enemies to lovers. Although, listen, it's book 1 of a large series. So, if you're getting into it, please know that you are not gonna get there. It's about this guy who's the son of, like, a big trader and then a general that he works with. Listen, that might not be entirely correct. Here's one of the issues I had in this book. There are a lot of characters, and some of them use more than one name, and I was reading it on my Kindle, so I couldn't, like, jump to the back of the book where it has the character list that, like, reminds you who you are reading about. So, like, the entire book was that TikTok audio that's like, where? You were where? With who? It took me a while to figure out who was who. There's definitely a book that picked up in the second half. I had a harder time getting into it, and once, I want to say, like, I was 40 or 50% of the way through, it definitely picked up for me, and I had a much better time. The beginning was difficult. Also, though it is a romance, there's a lot of political things going on. So definitely, I would not get into this with the mentality of, like, oh, it's just, like, straight into romance. No. No. You gotta get through a lot of politics. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm really not. I really enjoyed the main character. He was one of my favorites. One of my favorite characters of the year, even, maybe. I'd have to reflect. But sometimes it would just be, like, long chunks of characters I didn't necessarily care about or even know who they were, doing just things that confused me. So I do intend on reading the second one this year, and we will see how I do with it. Especially because when did I read the first one? I read Ballad of Sword and Wine in the end of August. So I'm a little worried about picking up the second one and completely forgetting who anyone is. Like, I'm gonna be reading that book clueless. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. And the second Chinese book I read was The Disabled Tyrant's Beloved Pet Fish. This is whimsy. This is peak whimsy, guys. I'm gonna put it under Jade Legacy. But this is another gay romance. But the plot of this one is about a man who dies. Stay with me here. He dies. And he transmigrates into a fish. The fish of this, like, in a book that he read, or I think it was in a book that he read as a human. There's a story about this tyrant who, like, marries a woman and gets revenge on all these people, and he dies and wakes up as the man's pet fish. But before the man is, like, this horrible tyrant. So he's like, oh, okay, I have to change the story and make him a good person. And I know you're sitting here like, you said this was a romance, and now you're telling me the man is a fish. Don't tell me the tyrant's gonna romance the fish. And well, he is. He is. It was cute. It was really cute. It's really funny. Because the fish gets, like, powers throughout it and can, like, turn into a human for an hour. And it's just, like, running around panicked about, like, how am I gonna get back in my tank on time? Like, it's nonsense. But it's a really light, fluffy, fun read. I'm gonna read the second one at some point. For more fish shenanigans. It was goofy. And he does romance a fish. Or at least I know that's coming. I don't think they've gotten very far into that part yet, but it's certainly the intention. Honestly, like, if you're looking for light fluff and you are open to dealing with the fish parts, I would recommend it. I would, and I stand by that. I think it's a good time. Unfortunately, we now have to go to the fish book that was less of a good time. I enjoyed it, but where do I put this? Where? We're gonna put it at the top of a solid time. It could potentially go at the end of We Love Whimsy, but I'm trying to balance it out. Shark Heart by Emily Habeck. This was a rough read. And not in, like, a bad time kind of way, but just in, like, I saw some people saying, like, oh, it, like, has a good job of balancing its devastating moments with its funny and light moments. I don't know if I would say that. It does have a few light and funny moments, certainly, but it's mostly just devastatingly sad the entire time. This is about a man who is turning into a shark, so it kind of pairs with man turns into a fish, man turns into a shark, except in Shark Heart, we basically just have to accept that you live in a world where people sometimes turn into animals. And it's not like a fun, whimsical magic thing. It's basically just an allegory for, like, being sick. Like, really, really sick. And, like, what it's like when that's happening to a loved one. And watching them, like, turn into someone you don't recognize and trying to take care of them through that. It's brutal. It's a read that you can get through in a decent amount of time. It's told in, like, pretty short little chapters. It's some of the perspectives and storytelling choices are interesting. Sometimes it's told in, like, snippets of a play or different things. But when I sit here and I'm like, would I reread this? No. Absolutely not. Sometimes I like to be sad. So it does fit the bill for that. But you have to be in the right mentality to get through it. I also wasn't too jazzed on the ending. But that's just kind of like based off of me and my own personal pet peeves with like a few specific tropes that I won't get into because like spoilers. I understand what it was going for. It just didn't do it for me, is really what I would say about the ending. Okay. Did I hit a reading slump after that one too? Yeah, light reading slump. It put me in a reading slump for about a month, which sounds right because of course it did. Of course it put me in a reading slump. Like, who wouldn't have? So, it is what it is. Next, I read The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which I had never read. Where do I put this? Does this go? I'm gonna put this below The Spear Cuts Through Water. But let me just say that I had a very good time with this book. I think ultimately, in reflection, like I had a good time with both of them, and The Spear Cuts Through Water just had more interesting things going on with it in terms of its writing style and what it had to say and all of that. So I could not, in good faith, put The Secret History above it. But boy, I had a great time reading The Secret History. I had so much fun reading it. It's basically about a guy who gets into an elite New England college and starts studying classics in this small group. And you know that his small group of friends wind up murdering someone. Like, that's in the first chapter. That's not a plot hole. Spoiler. It's not a spoiler. But then you kind of jump back and learn how they got there and learn what happened leading up to the murder and after the murder. I really like it because of the way it's written in like really, I don't want to say stuck up prose. That's not the right word at all. But it is written more like a classic and more curated. I'm really struggling to find what the right word for it would be. So it reads like this really intense dark academia, like, oh, it's all aesthetic and all that. But that pairs really well with the way it sort of pulls back the curtain on all of that. Like, they do murder someone. And also all of them are a mess. So you're sitting here like thinking about like, I knew of The Secret History certainly, and I had seen edits of The Secret History that really just makes it look like this like really cool dark academia, like whatnot. A character does drugs in a Burger King parking lot at one point in this book, and then proceeds to judge the girl who gave him that for doing the exact same thing. It's vastly unserious for the way that it's written. The dichotomy of the tone in which it's written versus the events that are unfolding, I found funny. I don't know if it was meant to be humorous. I found it deeply funny. The characters I also really liked. Liked might not be the best word. They're all terrible people. Everyone in this book is terrible. But they felt real. And maybe it's like, listen, I too went to a small liberal arts college, not quite in New England, but in Pennsylvania. So maybe the energy that it gave just really stood out to me. Like, we had an English house, like a little house that you went to for the English classes. So maybe that also played a part. Like, I could sort of like reflect on my college experience in reading this book. But it was great. I loved the vibes. I liked the characters. The characters made me laugh. They were bad people, but they made me laugh. and I was constantly changing my opinions about them. I just think it's great writing. Unreliable narrator number 1, though, is in this book. Don't trust anything from that man. For real. All right, we're nearly through. We got 3 more books. I know that after The Secret History, I read If We Were Villains, because it's kind of recommended as a similar read. It is about a group of pretentious college friends who commit a murder. Except unlike The Secret History, in which they're classics majors and all do Greek, this one's Shakespeare themed. There's a lot of Shakespeare. A lot of Shakespeare quotes. They put on a lot of Shakespeare shows. If you like Shakespeare, I'd read it. It was good, but I am putting it in a solid time. Below Shark Heart. Yeah. This one's a little biased and probably unfair. Objectively, it should probably go higher. So take it as a high recommendation. I just have to put it a little lower because I made the mistake of reading it after A Secret History. Or The Secret History? The Secret History. The Secret History. I read it after The Secret History. And closely after. And with very similar plots. And it just was good, but it was worse than The Secret History. So it sort of got a little bit tainted, maybe, for me, just because of that. Because I was stuck comparing the two mentally. Because of course I was. I had just read The Secret History. I wanted something just like that. And that's not what I got. But it is a good read. And yes, if you like Shakespeare, you should read this. They're all the most obnoxious Shakespeare people you've ever seen. The cast in this is also relatively unlikable. With maybe... It's funny in the way that you can kind of, like, pair them up with some of the Secret History characters. I didn't really like the... I don't know if I'd even call it a romance, but whatever the main character had going on with one of the girls in If We Were Villains, I don't know. I found it a little uncomfortable, and there's no good reason to. Like, it's not like anything happens to justify that. So I don't know if it was a writing thing. I don't know if this is a me thing. It just, something about it did not resonate with me at all. But that would honestly be my biggest complaint about it. There's also a lot of Shakespeare chunks where they're just quoting Shakespeare. And I'm sure that the quotes that were picked relate well to what's going on. And I enjoy Shakespeare, but I wouldn't say that I have like a deep, fundamental connection to Shakespeare or any of his works. So that certainly got a little lost. Okay. 2 more books. After If We Were Villains, when did I read? What month was If We Were Villains? End of November. So these last 2 books, I was at 18 out of 20 books and had 1 month. So The Humans by Matt Haig, I kind of just grabbed because I saw someone else saying it was decent and funny, and it wasn't that long, and I needed to get through a book if I was going to reach my goal. So with that in mind, it's going at, I certainly finished it. I feel like I have to put it below Gallant. I can't remember Gallant well enough to say if it's better than The Humans. But I do know that the only 2 books in which I skipped a chunk of them was The Book That Wouldn't Burn and The Humans. The Humans is about an alien who comes to Earth because this mathematician has like discovered some formula that would like vastly speed up human progression to a point that would be dangerous for other species. So they murder that mathematician. And this alien comes and takes that mathematician's place with the intention of making sure that nobody else knows about the formula, and if they do, he has to kill them. But ultimately becomes about him discovering humanity and what it means to be human, human relationships. It was nice. it was funny. I will say the first few chapters really made me laugh, and I thought early in that I was going to enjoy it more than I did. And then it sort of slowed down from there, ultimately. It wasn't bad. It's just that, like, I found the most compelling part of the book to be watching this alien discover things about humanity and, like, form bonds with the family that he's suddenly a part of. Because, like, the mathematician that he turns into is not, like, a great dude. He had a really fraught relationship with his wife and child that this alien has no idea about. So watching him attempt to, like, work through those connections and bonds that, like, don't mean anything to him and make no sense, and he doesn't understand why he's got such a weird relationship with his wife, I found to be really compelling. I found it to be less compelling when the aliens were, like, starting to be like, hey, are you doing your job? And then we're, like, worried about another alien assassin, and there's, like, some action scenes, and that did less for me, to be honest. And I don't mind that kind of stuff. I'm happy to read that kind of book. Murderbot has got a lot of action in it. It just was not what had pulled me into the humans in the first place. Like, I would say that the first, maybe even 60% of the book was about this alien kind of mostly just discovering humanity. And that was compelling. And then when we got off track from that, I skipped ahead. Gonna be honest, I did. And he still does, there's still stuff happening, but I don't know. It lost me a little bit there. And I know that's not great. I don't think I skipped that much. I think I skipped like 50 pages. I skipped less than I skipped in the library one. So we're gonna say that that's fine. I certainly finished it. I did finish it. As long as you qualify finishing it as skipping 50 pages to get to the end, which I do, which is why this is my list. Okay. The Tainted Cup. The Tainted Cup has to go and We Love Whimsy. I just have to figure out where. Let's put it above the Fish Book and below Jade Legacy. Yes. The Tainted Cup. What was that about, and who was it by? I need water. I have been yapping. The Tainted Cup is by Robert Jackson Bennett. It is the first book in a series. It is the only one out right now. I will happily read the next one when it comes out. It is about a assistant to an investigator investigating this murder, but the world it takes place in is really interesting. So the guy who got murdered, basically, like, his blood turned into a tree, and, like, so his body, like, exploded into a tree. That's, like, how this starts, right? And we basically live in a world where, like, there are leviathans who rise up from the ocean and attempt to get to shore during the wet season, and they have to build walls to keep them back. And, like, there's hills that are actually corpses of these leviathans that have been slain on the land. And that's not even the main plot. That's just kind of like a side portion to the world that we exist in for the Tainted Cup. So loved the world. I thought the world was so interesting. Certainly the whimsy. The whimsy is there, right? The getting into it took me a minute. And I wouldn't say that I, like, stopped, but I was slow reading it in the beginning. I'm someone who tends to really like strong character writing. And I don't know if I would say that the Tainted Cup had the strongest character writing. I liked the characters, but I wouldn't say that I, like, latched on to any of them. So that took me a minute. It certainly focuses more on the mystery and solving what is going on in this world. But I did eventually become very invested in what was going on in this world. And as we learned more things, I was like, okay, wait, let me see where this is going. And I don't read a lot of mysteries. That's not typically my genre. I am notorious. Anyone who knows me knows that I will look up spoilers. Like, I'll just see I'll Google it, and then I will finish the book knowing how it ends, but I will Google it beforehand. I did not look this up. I got the answers all on my own through reading it all the way through, so that was nuts. Like, if a mystery book gets me to do that, it's gotta be pretty good. I wound up liking the main character as well as the detective that he works with. They were both very nice. I just can't, like, say that any of the other characters were super memorable. Thank you. I know. I didn't Google anything. Isn't that crazy? It helps that it's relatively new and there's not like a lot of content for it out there. So even if I had wanted to look it up, I don't think I would have found much. But I was like the perfect amount of invested where like I wanted to know what happened, but I wasn't like horribly anxious about it where I needed to look it up and see what happened. And maybe you want a book that'll make you horribly anxious about what's going to happen. But for me, that just means that I will Google it. So it was good that that didn't happen. The world is really cool. There's the Leviathans. People also have like enhancements. Like our main character is working as her assistant because he's got little like creatures in his brain that make sure he remembers everything that's ever happened. So like photographic memory, except it's because there's like straight up little dudes swimming in his brain or something. Which I think that's great. And the mystery ending felt pretty cohesive and like earned. Sometimes I feel like when you're finishing up a mystery, you'll be like, oh, so they just like, this doesn't make sense. Like the author just put this together because it needed an answer. I felt like it made sense. I felt like it was well done. I feel like there's more of the world that I would like to see. So I'm still interested in the second book, but like the first book did not leave me feeling like I was lacking in terms of that particular story. So in terms of that, I thought it did a good job. Yes, exactly. The brainworms. The brainworms keep the memories. Yeah, so that's everything I read. Let's just see if there's anything on this tier list I need to move around. This all feels good. I'm gonna leave Spirit Cuts Through Water as my number one book. I'm gonna, where? I think I'm gonna leave The Secret History here. I was debating putting it behind This Is How You Lose the Time War. I really enjoyed This Is How You Lose the Time War. I think about The Secret History more these days. But it might just be because of my particular interests. Like, objectively, this is probably what I would recommend over The Secret History. But for my taste, yeah. This all feels good. We love whimsy. Ninth House, I go back and forth. Ninth House, I think I liked more when I read it than when I reflect on it. But I want to read the sequel and see how I feel about it as a cohesive work. But I had a good time reading it. It's just like when I think back about it on it, I'm like, did I enjoy it? I did. I don't know why I have that. This all feels right. This all feels right. And yeah, that was my reading for the year. This year I have a bigger reading goal. I have 30 books as a goal, and I'm halfway through The Will of the Many. I have to finish it in a week so that I have time to read a second book this month. And hopefully I'll hit that goal. We can always do this again. But yeah, this is a lot of books for me. I think I read like 5 books in 2023. So I'm pretty proud that I'm getting back into reading. I'd like to keep it up. And I'd, maybe want to do a few more videos about reading and books and stuff as I go. I don't know if it would all be streamed or if I would do like a few like book reviews attempting to make like YouTube videos. My editing skills are the problem, but I wouldn't be against it. So I had a really fun time doing this. I like just sitting and yapping. I think I'm pretty solid at it. And yeah, that's my list. If you disagree with me, obviously you can tell me. But no judgment if we disagree. I think all of these could subjectively be enjoyed or hated. Unless you don't like This Is How You Lose the Time War, then you should keep that to yourself. That's the one exception. But yeah, thank you for hanging out with me for this, and have a great day.